And is this thing working? I am operating on short of a few brain cells. Um, okay, so we'll let audio catch up. Good morning, Pavlo. Thank you for joining. And as you can tell by my sultry voice here, yeah, looks like we have audio. Buenos dias, senor. Lo siento, Ted. I am sorry you're drinking decaf. But I have just run out of coffee myself, so I'm having to switch to water. Ah, okay. It's been a rough week. Let's get started. Um, I think of myself now as a viral sommelier. I travel around the world hand selecting only the best viruses and collect them. And I'm thinking of, I'm sure there's a book of the top wines and like wine spectator ratings and all that stuff. I'm thinking of like if I had good names and geographic regions of my viruses, I think I could have a pretty valuable catalog. So sometime in the last week or week and a half, I picked up a bug and I felt a little beat up, achy in El Salvador over the weekend, but I thought I was feeling okay. Then on my flight home on Monday night, I could feel the sore throat kick in, and yeah, it's so yeah, exactly, Pavlo. I ran out of coffee because I was trying to catch up and prepare for this because I hadn't done it last night. So I ran out of coffee while preparing I Need Coffee, the paradox. So anyway, I have a new virus. I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10, because it has a nice persistent cough, raspy throat, and mild fever, only about 1 degree. So, not too bad, but yeah, it's got a long finish, as they say in the wine industry. So it's going to be a slow weekend. I'll call it the pre-weekend because it wasn't El fin de semana, because on Thursday, I don't even know. I think Wednesday night I went to the airport and I flew to El Salvador on Thursday. I think that's the sequence of events. So, yeah, Wednesday, February 5th is when I was there. So there I was on my private charter operated by Avianca Star Alliance. I invited, over 100 of my closest friends to go on the trip in my private jet. And yeah, this time though, because I have been, I have spent far too much money flying to El Salvador, I am now a gold something. And I get access to the Star Alliance Lounge in LAX, which is actually pretty nice. It's a pretty large lounge, fairly nice, good service, some food and drinks and full service bar, you name it. And I was hanging out there. And funny story, I'm waiting there, and some people, a couple guys roll up, or a guy and his grandmother there in the coat roll up, and they sit down. And then these two really big, like, bodybuilder guys come and sit down next to me. It turns out that these guys just happen to be in the lounge at LAX at 9 or 10 o'clock at night. They sit down and they know the guy sitting next to them. I don't know how they know, but they started talking. And then it turns out, they're just talking right next to me. Turns out that they are on the same flight to Vietnam that night. Like, what are the odds? That never happens to me, really. It's happened to me once or twice in my life. But here, the two guys knew each other. They happen to be at LAX in the lounge at the same time on the same flight to Vietnam. Like, I thought that was pretty crazy. So I was like, okay. So I didn't meet anyone at LAX that I knew. I didn't meet anyone on my flight to El Salvador that I knew. I mean, where are you folks? Come on, step it up. We need some synchronicity. And if you know what this photo is, you know where I am. This is the El Salvador airport. Once you get through everything, get your luggage, and are heading out the door, you can take a photo in this replica of the presidential residency palace. Not sure what they call it, but there is President Bukele and his wife and the photo op in the airport. Yeah. And I I had a fun time with my rental car this time. Apparently there was a conference going on, and the rental cars with the guy that I rent from were all in use, and one was being repaired. And so I got this surprise mystery car. It appears to be a 2013 Hyundai Elantra. Yes, Pablo, the chairs are well worn. Several million people come through that airport, sit in those chairs and take photos. So I think they may have to buy some new furniture and refresh that. And it's only, I think that display is only a year old, year and a half old. So lots of people. It's a great scene. This is my 2013 Hyundai Elantra rental car. And this is me being on the DL in El Salvador because I look like a local driving this thing. Like, you could never tell. This is not your typical rental car. It's hilarious. And turns out that, long backstory to Salvadoran cars, but the average Salvadoran car is imported from the U.S., often from a, what do they call it? Salvage title. So a salvage title or an auction car that is too expensive to repair in the U.S. will be shipped down to El Salvador, get repaired for literally a couple $100s, and be back on the road. It's quite amazing, the car economy they have there. And so this is a 2013 Elantra, and it has totally beat shocks. The shocks are basically useless. So it was super sketchy driving this thing, and I mean, yeah. And the TPS sensor light was not on when I got it, but it turned on. And despite going to the gas station and trying to get all four tires aired up, I don't know if the car had a flat tire or not. The headlights barely worked. The windows are tinted so dark in typical Salvadoran style that I could barely see out. There was something on the windshield, like an extra layer of tint, that made it nearly impossible to see out at night, given my aging eyes. So it was an experience. And when there are dogs in the road, you try to honk at them to, so you don't hit them. I go to push the horn, and it looks like an airbag, but it's not. The airbag had been deployed, been removed, and they take a piece of plastic and they upholster it with the Hyundai logo to make it look like the actual airbag and horn, but there's nothing there. It's just hard plastic. So I didn't have a horn either. So it was pretty, I call it an authentic Salvadoran rental car experience. I've never driven a car with totally worn out shocks before, so I had to change my driving style. It was very interesting. And when you're headed away from the airport, you have the ubiquitous or the obligatory stop at a Salvadoran gas station where they serve a nice desayuno. They have an espresso machine with either hardcore pull-in shots on a full espresso machine, or they have the automated espresso machine. And if you order a black coffee, they do not have black coffee, filter coffee ready. They make you an Americano, just like Melbourne, Australia, or Denmark, or wherever, right? Like, they head over the espresso machine. This is in a gas station in El Salvador, folks. Hello. Okay. So, yes, I got my coffee. I did not have desayuno at the gas station because I did have the coffee, though. Sat there for a minute, let it cool off before I got on the road so I didn't burn myself in my posh luxury rental car, hitting a pothole at 30 miles an hour. And I did not have desayuno el gasolino because this is my, oh my gosh, what is the phrase? I looked it up this morning. Let me see if I can find it. Parillo? Hold up. Sorry, I know I just killed it, but capilla. Capilla. This is what I'll call my capilla del desayuno. And this is my chapel of breakfast, or my temple of breakfast. This is Doña Silvia in Berlin, El Salvador. And this is just where I go every morning for breakfast. It's this giant open air breakfast place. There's a specific term for when you walk up and it's buffet style. I can't remember. Lo siento, maestra, for forgetting this phrase, but you go up to the front, you get your food, and it's buffet style, and they have the typical desayuno típico. So that's where I go. So that was my first stop when I headed into town before I saw anyone. And I was surprised by the rascals in Berlin, El Salvador. Unbeknownst to me, they leased a new office for the ERP Center of Excellence. And so this is a full house, and it has its own palm trees. Excuse me, coconut trees, not just palm trees. Literal, real coconut trees bearing fruit, and these are a serious health and safety hazard because these coconuts will drop, and they're 15 feet up in the air, and that would be a bad day if you're standing near them. So I think they just had them trimmed. So yeah, we have a new office. It's about 1,100 square feet, 110 square meters roughly. And we have coconuts. There's a big living room there, and there are 2 other bedrooms like this. And yeah, so they have set this up as the new office. So it's pretty cool. They got everything moved and set up and got the TV and internet and power. And yeah, so they're in business. Lots of room now. And yeah, it was super cool. Super chivissimo, as they say. And the QR code up there is my little tour from last Friday. Sorry for the poor video and audio quality. It was on my cell phone. And what was interesting was I recorded it or streamed it using the Restream website on my cell phone, which worked, but it makes you choose which cell phone camera. And on the iPhone, there's the front camera, the rear camera, and multiple lenses. You have to choose the specific one. And interestingly, when I chose the back camera, like the main camera, I thought that would be better quality. It is unable to utilize the image stabilization of the iPhone. So I apologize. It was terrible. It was just bouncing all over the place. And I didn't realize that at the time. It was the first time I've ever done that. So pro tip, test your video first, which I obviously didn't. Also, the microphone worked terribly when the back camera was used as the camera. So clearly the iPhone microphones are expecting the selfie camera. So that was another lesson learned. So I'm not going to mess with cameras anymore. It'll just be the selfie camera forward facing, and that allowed for much better audio as well. So it was possible to stream from an iPhone using Restream in a browser, but it was compromised. So I'm trying to figure out how I can do a stream from El Salvador. It's a lot of work. It's a hassle, but in progress. On to work. Weekly projects. We had a little project, nice little project on what our customer calls a credit and rebill procedure, where they send out an invoice, they realize it needs an adjustment, either addition, subtraction, whatever, and they want to reissue that corrected invoice. And so you might think, oh, that's not big a deal, but it gets kind of involved. So that's what Jocelyn and I worked on this week. We learned a few things, and the customer was pretty happy with it. So that was cool. And then Power Automate, we're digging into the BC approval workflows and learning the pitfalls and hurdles in that. And then we have a new Sentinel rule. And if you don't know what Sentinel is for Business Central, go check it out. Okay. And on the Sentinel rule front, coincidentally, this morning we're on a call reviewing some data, and you might notice something interesting here. These are U.S. American dates. So that posting date there in American date format, you might notice something interesting. Like, I don't know, it's about 10 months in the future. Just saying. And so we have a potential solution to check for that problem. And Monday, lunes, I was still in El Salvador. I was there from Thursday through Monday. This is a photo of the square area of downtown Berlin. That is the church, and that is a typical, what is called a moto taxi in Berlin. Also known in other countries as a tuk-tuk. In Thailand, they were called tuk-tuk, so that's where I first learned of it. But they do exist in India as well. I don't know what other countries, but very popular in Berlin, El Salvador. They're just flying all over town, taking people, kids to school, people shopping, you name it. Really, really popular, inexpensive form of transportation. And on Monday, before I left, I got to meet... Woo! We're doing it live. I got to meet with two of the English Academy Scholarship recipients. We have Fabricio in the back and we have Daniela in the front here. And they are doing great. Daniela is just finishing up her 10-month intensive English program. She's doing awesome, and she is looking to interview for English call center jobs. And this allows her to get paid while practicing and reinforcing her English on a daily basis. So that is a career path that we have kind of discussed in order to help Berliners kind of cement their English skills. And I believe Fabricio is starting college. So he's doing that. And he is taking an intro English class in college. And he's like, it is so boring. It's like, hello, my name is Fabricio. And he's been through like 9 months of the E4CC Academy program because he's been doing that daily. So he is well ahead, but he apparently has to take this intro English class in college. So he's a little frustrated by that, understandably. So that was actually great. You know, the English program and scholarship has been so successful that like he's just sleeping through his English college class. So then I flew home on Monday, got home around midnight, and fell into bed with a sore throat. And this pretty much shot at me on Tuesday. Yeah, I was conscious, alive, but I have no idea what happened on Tuesday. So, okay. I have an animation challenge here, but we will just roll with it. On Wednesday, I received this device, and I apologize. I didn't. It's on my Twitter feed. Someone recommended this. I was asking for a way to do wireless screen share from laptops to a TV. And if you've tried this with a Windows laptop, you know it is a bit of a nightmare. Even with smart TVs, some TVs support Chromecast, some support the Miracast, which apparently is what Windows uses, but the Miracast is a nightmare. I've tried it on my LG TV. It's just a disaster. It doesn't work. And so I was looking at the cheap Chinese dongles on Amazon, but they're like $65, like really sketchy reviews. Someone on Twitter replied and recommended the Roku for streaming from Windows. Never occurred to me. I've used Roku in the past, and I love the devices. They work great. But I had no idea it supported Miracast or Screencast from Windows devices. So I ordered this on Amazon. It was like $30-some, much cheaper than the device, the random dongles. This is the Express 4K Plus. I don't know if certain models didn't support it with Roku, so I just went with the 4K Plus, hoping that it did. And it works fantastic. You plug it in, it's 5 minutes of setup, and then it's just magical. It just starts working, and there you go. You just do Windows K on the laptop. It shows you the wireless streaming device, and boom, your screen is projected onto the TV. So the reason for this is in El Salvador, in the office, they were saying, gosh, pain in the butt to have to we have an HDMI cable, so they're moving it from laptop to laptop. If they're in trainings or meetings, they're literally having to unplug, hand it over, swap. It's just a hassle. So like, I don't know why it didn't occur to me earlier. This Roku is going to work fantastic for the office. So all four of them can just Windows K, pop up their screen and share really quickly. So really, really cool. Like little things that you don't really necessarily think about. So big win, Roku Express 4K Plus for screen sharing. And then I was trying to catch up on some email requests that I got. And it was just, I got this thread forwarded to me, this Nightmare BC support thread from a customer and ISV, and like no idea what they're talking about. Is back and forth with all this like jargon, and they didn't know what the problem was. So I'm trying to just make sense of what this. I was like, I can't figure out what they're talking about. So I went to Perplexity because that's what I'm kind of playing with now to just try it as a tool. And I said, hey, can you summarize this crazy email thread for me? It's like, sure, paste it in. So I copied the whole email with screenshots. I clicked paste, and it took a while. It wasn't clear what was going on, but it shows paste.txt. And I'm assuming that did not include the screenshots. But anyway, I hit enter, and it's like, hey, here's the summary of what's going on. And it wasn't like insightful and perfect, but at least it went through the 97 emails and kind of summarize what is going on. I'm like, okay, at least I'm oriented and I don't have to scroll through 27 pages to try and figure out who's talking to who. Even reference name, like, Bob said this and then Josh said this and then Sally said this. It's like, okay. And it couldn't make heads or tails of what the problem was, but at least I kind of had the sequence of events. And from there, I reread the email and kind of understood what was going on. And it then took a full hour for me to really understand what the problem was and what they're dealing with. And massive communication challenges internally with this ISV. And then the customer doesn't understand the technical details and they're asking for our help. Really, really messy situation. But I was subsequently told, well, duh, Steve, Microsoft Copilot does that in Office 365. I'm like, okay. Well, it turns out it's at least, as far as I can tell, an additional $30 a month just for Copilot for Microsoft 365, the application suite formerly known as Office 365. And I can't quite tell because Microsoft licensing is a nightmare, but it looks like it's not just automatic or even available as just a little add-on. You have to buy like the version of Office, even up to E3, E5 or whatever. You have to buy a version that has that, or you have to add it on. I don't know. I'm like, I'm not messing with that. I'm not paying $30 a month for a Copilot. It's not worth it. Yeah, you get a button that does this summarization there, but whatever. If your company pays for it, good on you. I'm not paying $360 a month for that, or a year for that. So anyway, apparently it is available in Office. I just paste my email in Perplexity. I'm fine with that. And upcoming events, we have Directions NA in April. That's coming up pretty quick. I don't know that they've released the sessions for that yet. So that's going to be interesting. I'm not sure how the speakers are going to know to travel to Directions. I don't know. I haven't received a notification, so maybe my sessions were not accepted yet. And then we have Hamburg Color Cloud in April, Chicago Dynamics Con in May. I finally booked my hotel and flights for that. Finally. Last week, Dynamics Mind in Slovenia in late May. Thursday, Jueves. So this may seem trivial, but David in El Salvador, in Berlin, ERP Center of Excellence. He works on a lot of report layouts. So this is an RDLC report layout that the customer is also using in Excel, and he's modifying this. And when he was presenting the sample of the modified report that he was working with, he went in a Snagit, went a screenshot, took a screenshot, highlighted some stuff, and he thought, I'd better put the draft stamp on here. I absolutely love this because I have done the exact same thing. Why? Because when you send something over, and this has happened to me, I send over a draft of something with partially modified. People look at it, instantly freak out because they're like, you didn't do this, you didn't do this, why is this not aligned? And because they don't like take 3 seconds to realize this is an in progress project. So he realized this, took the initiative, found the stamp feature in Snagit, pasted draft on there. Love it. Absolutely love it. And this is kudos to the Berlin team if you're listening. This is what I love about them. They just know this stuff and they take the initiative and put it on there. I didn't tell him to do that, never even mention it, but he did it because he anticipated what was going to come back when he shared this screenshot. So I highly recommend this. I do it in red because people don't even notice this. So I do this on documents. I do this on images, whatever. Just to make it clear, folks, this is a draft. Don't freak out that it's not complete or it's typo. So great idea. Highly recommend it. If you're not familiar with Snagit, they have a stamps feature where you can stamp images, check marks, map pins, things like this. So great feature. And then Ronald was working, he's been working on BC workflow approval workflows, and using Power Automate. And he's like, Steve, I have it. I tested it. It's not working. I don't know what's going on. It's driving me nuts. So we dug into it, and 3 layers deep into the flow, we think there is a bug in the out-of-the-box Business Central workflow approval workflow templates. And we believe it involves 2 things. One is this setting, the start and wait for approval step. There's a setting called approval type, and it is default. We believe it is custom responses wait for 1 response. But it doesn't just wait for 1 response. It waits for responses and then it fires. And it turns out that if the approval from 2 or more people occur within some period of time, multiple responses will go into this step. And guess what? It causes the flow. Those multiple responses are not properly handled later in the steps. It causes the flow to cancel the approval request. Even though both people approve or both people reject or whatever, it doesn't know how to evaluate that. So this, I believe, is a bug in the out-of-the-box BC approval workflows. So he had to go in and choose first to respond. And it gets in the question, well, is it really first to respond? What if there's an approve and a reject? Do you want to handle that? And so the entire flow has to be redesigned to handle that because the current branch of approve, reject, or cancel is only expecting a single response. And not to criticize the citizen developers out there, but this is what happens when a non-developer builds something and does not anticipate edge cases. Okay, what if 1 person accepts, the other rejects? This doesn't handle that. What if 2 people approve at the same time? This doesn't handle that. So it's just not a good solution. It's going to break right away, and you're going to have several hours of support trying to fix it. So that's what we discovered. So we're trying to figure out, okay, how do we make this thing more robust, more reliable, actually work? Ronald is learning that. And Dynamics Community Summit Roadshows, February in Dallas and Denver, and then April in Toronto. I have not checked these for several weeks, so head on over to Summit-Roadshow, double check the dates before signing up or attending, and make sure they're still going on, what the date is, what the time is, and if the location has changed. And it is just a nonstop disaster in the cybersecurity world, and I'll call this the cyber trifecta. In just 1 week, 3 major firewall cybersecurity platforms had compromises or 0 days. And Fortinet discloses yet another firewall authentication bypass. Apparently it was patched in January, but I believe this was a 0-day that they detected in being actively exploited. There is a patch for it in January, but of course, people don't immediately patch their firewalls, especially given that I've patched my firewall and VPN appliances, and there was a bug in the patch, and the firmware bricked my appliance. And I literally had to send the physical device back to get a replacement because it was an unrecoverable brick. So when you combine firmware updates that brick your appliance or just corrupt your data with constant updates, like, you can't win as an IT or cybersecurity manager. So check out that fun article. Not to be outdone, Palo Alto Networks also has an authentication bypass exploit in their PAN-OS software. And I didn't bother to read what conditions are required to exploit these. If it's just all firewalls, if it's only publicly accessible admin interfaces or what. But I just it's happening weekly, folks. And then to finish out the trifecta, Ivanti has 3 critical flaws, whatever their Connect Secure and Policy Secure software are. And one was a CVE score of 9.9. Pretty good. It's like cybersecurity Olympics. They're going for the gold here. So yeah. So if you think your firewall, your VPN, your network security, no matter how much you paid for it, if you think you are somehow secure because you chose the best cybersecurity appliance in the world, oh, folks, you have a bad day waiting for you. Nothing can be like these cybersecurity vendors, these firewall vendors are just getting hammered. And I don't blame them. I get it, but it is just whack-a-mole. And Friday, Viernes, that would be today when I collapse immediately after this live stream. Ted says, frequently there are mitigation steps you can take to try to mitigate some of these flaws. That is true. However, it is a constant vigilance. If you are not constantly getting updates, if you are not paying attention to your firmware version, if you are not very careful about how you have these things configured, I've received the email notifications from my security provider. It says literally unplug your appliance. It is insecure. We cannot patch it, and you just need to wait. So it really depends on the situation, but you have to be aware of the problem. So good times. And I need to catch up on some payments and process AR and manage receivables. I need to catch up on support tickets because I was traveling and been sick for a week. And then I need to, there's a lovely Dynamics GP bug that is in the current releases, but it involves a component that hasn't been supported for a decade, unfortunately, even though it is still included with the product. So the new releases break processes in this older component of Dynamics GP. So customers are asking me and my ISV to fix the bug. So we have to research the bug, we have to document it, we have to have our developer create a workaround. And then, yes, it's a good time. So now the customer is bugging me to get the bug fixed in Dynamics GP because it's not going to get fixed. Anyway, so that's what I get to do today. And in the cool videos front, there is someone who, I forget it, it's like North something Animal Rescue. He goes out with this $10,000 to $20,000 commercial DJI drone, and he has it's really hardcore fancy software. It's a search and rescue kind of oriented drone, I guess, and he has the thermal vision kit on it. He is able to spot an animal out in the middle of nowhere, and he helps people find their animals. So this is a lost dog in the winter, in the snow, in the Adirondacks, middle of nowhere. He's able to just fly up, scan, see the little tiny red dot, zoom in, and tell the owner where the dog is. And so he rescues, animal a month easy. Really, really fascinating. And watching the videos of him using the drone, he records kind of the remote control video screen, and it is really, really cool. Granted, it's a $10,000 to $20,000 drone. So yeah. So anyway, check that out. Thought it was fascinating to see that. Super cool. So owners are finding their dogs, and the dogs get lost, and they just, huddle in the snow in the middle of winter because I guess they're tired, don't know what to do. And so, yeah, pretty cool to be reunited. So Paso a Paso in El Salvador. Jocelyn did a great job on the credit and rebill documentation. So we had a call with the customer and their third-party industry developer, and loved the documentation she developed on the credit and rebill process, how that will be done in the industry-specific product, how BC normally would do it if you do it manually, and then a third angle of how this product is going to call the BC web APIs in order to implement that procedure. Because we had to consider all perspectives, and what are the limitations of the BC web API when doing that? What do we need to look for when testing? So that was really cool. Jocelyn and I both learned about the cancel, correct, and I think it's called a corrective credit memo, something like that. The steps that you can do to correct or reverse a posted sales invoice. So that was cool. And it turns out the customer wants that on the AP side as well for some reason. So we're going to look into that. So that was a great job by Jocelyn. And then David is working on a multi-entity management report layout that is kind of challenging. So he's working on initial versions. We're trying to refine that to add some data to that. And then Ronald was working on that Business Central approval workflow in Power Automate when we discovered the bug in the template. So he is now, finding the landmines, figuring out, okay, how can we fix them? And I don't know the answer yet, because when you get multiple responses, we don't know yet how to evaluate it. The template only has the ability, currently, it just says, what is the response equal to? And it assumes one response. So we need to deal with multiple responses. How do you parse that? What if you have accept, reject? What if those are out of sequence by 5 minutes? Questions for how to deal with that both procedurally and then technically in the flow. And then, as I mentioned, Franklin wrote his first Sentinel rule. And so we're going to be in touch with Stefan Marone to try and incorporate that, because we are seeing this issue multiple times in our support tickets. So, hey, let's push this into Sentinel. Basically, anytime we're seeing a trend or a pattern in support tickets, we are going to write a Sentinel rule, if it makes sense, to detect this configuration issue and have a heads up in our annual support or monthly support scan with customers in order to detect the problem. And this new Sentinel rule is going into the GL setup page and checking the allow posting from, allow posting to dates. If it's not configured, issue a warning. If it's configured outside of a bounds, right? If it's 6 months in either direction, issue a warning. And so that's the Sentinel rule. Seems really obvious and simple, but as I showed you earlier, I believe we have customers posting to December 2025. What's going on here, folks? That shouldn't be an issue. And we're going to have a support ticket because of it. So let's use Sentinel to proactively deal with that situation. Okay, I'm exhausted. And today's Q&A trivia, did you know that Dreyer's ice cream has an entire Rocky Road collection? Folks, I did not get this memo. I've just been buying the original Rocky Road. And yet all this time, they have an entire collection of Rocky Road. Now, it turns out that's a bit of a not quite truthful, because the others are Mocha Almond Fudge Swirl, which as a Rocky Road connoisseur, I do not consider to be a true Rocky Road. But it's Rocky Road adjacent, so I'll cut them some slack. And hey, this weekend, while laying on the sofa recovering from my cold, I am happy to be an ice cream sommelier sampling the wares of the Dreyer's Rocky Road collection. So if you too are a Rocky Road connoisseur, go check out the Rocky Road collection. I don't know if this is a limited time offer or if this is a new artisanal product line that they are offering, but that's what's going on. So I hope you are feeling better than me, and I hope you have a good Friday. I am going to go make a new cup of coffee and battle with the big choice of Salvadoran artisanal, what do they call it? Single origin coffee from a particular finca of El Salvador, or should I go with my American roasted latte? So with that, folks, I'm going to go collapse and join a call with the ERP Center of Excellence team for a catch-up. And adios, nos vemos. Catch you later.